was thinking about Civil War, and people keep bringing up this Civil War with pride, this Civil War with like a threat. To me, there's an ignorance behind it. But I'm thinking, like, why are people talking about Civil War? What is the fascination with this Civil War? And I don't know if it's, people feel threatened with their guns, and they're tired of their guns being taken away, and that's kind of a Civil War. I think people want something to stand for. I think people talk about Civil War because they need something to stand for. There's something empty in their lives, and they just need something to stand for. I think people are confused, scared a little bit of progress because the country's changing. Minorities, brown people, they're making a stand, they're making a voice, and that hasn't really happened in the past. There's always been a few people to make a stand, a few people have a voice. Muhammad Ali, remember that? Malcolm X, remember that? Maya Angelou, and some others. But now, though, and maybe it's because of the media, we didn't have access to all the people who did make a stand or had a voice. But now, there's so many brown people, minorities, white people making a stand for human rights and humanity that I think it scares people. People are demanding a change, like the Black Lives Matter movement. That scares people because people are willing to march, make a stand, make a voice, knowing that there's a danger there. With Black Lives Matter, when they marched, there was a danger. The danger of the police, danger of mobs, whatever it is. But they did it anyway. Not to get off track, but when I watched the Black Lives Matter marches in my city, I probably saw more white people marching than black people. But either way. And I think this talk of Civil War, I think people are confused. They're confused. I read this book, and I don't remember. I think it's called The Sum of Something. But it talks about, I don't know how to say it, about gain. Something about gain where if I as a minority gain something, white people think that they're losing something. And that's not true. Some game something, I think they call it, I can't remember. And that's not true. So anytime I gain something as a minority, some white people think that they're losing something. Some people think they're losing something. It's not true. Anytime, a brown person gets an education, some people think they're losing out on education, that somehow I took it from them. That was their place. Not true. Not true. Or if I get a position or a title, or I get a seat in the company, I took somebody else's seat. Is the mindset. the mindset that somehow they're losing out, which is a misunderstanding. It's an ignorance. It's an ignorance because it's really not true, because we're all Americans, right? We all gain, especially if we stick together. We all gain. But I think that some people feel like they're losing ground because these minorities are speaking up and gaining ground for themselves. You know, what's interesting to me is statistics. Statistics. Like, we talk about closing the wealth gap between brown people and white Americans. And I don't know what that number is, but it's huge. Let's say, let's do the housing market. I don't know exactly what the number is, but I believe 60 to 70% of white American owned homes, and 28 to 40% of black people own homes. So there's this huge gap in home ownership for various reasons, right? But if we increase that gap, let's say minorities increase that gap from, let's say, 40% to 60%, and let's say white Americans own homes at 70%, that increases the gap to 10%. Well, my point is, by increasing the gap of minorities' home ownership, that doesn't take away from whites. Do you see what I'm saying? They're getting more homes ownership, and whites continue to have the ownership that they have. That's all I'm talking about.